Hello and welcome back to Dimension Quest. This week I'll be expanding my VMware Workstation based lab to allow for RDP through the pfSense firewall into my Ubuntu VM as well as into my Windows 11 VM. Now, before I go any further, I want to say that I do not recommend opening ports for NAT rules to remote desktop protocol to your public internet. Do not do that. Just don't. Everybody else that has any experience with this will tell you the same thing. It is not secure. You will be hacked. Don't do it. The reason that I'm doing this in my environment here is because this pfSense that we're looking at on the screen is a virtual machine running inside of VMware Workstation that has the WAN interface connected to my local area network. My WAN interface is not my public internet connection. So that's why I'm doing this. I want to allow my workstation or any other system, laptop on my local area network, the ability to RDP into my VMware Workstation environment to access one of these VMs inside here, either Windows 11 or Ubuntu. So obviously I've already enabled RDP on each of these VMs here, but I do not currently have RDP port forwarded to any systems right now. Let's go ahead and confirm that. I have my Ramina remote desktop client here on my Fedora 39 workstation. I've already put in the IP address for my Ubuntu VM there, and the IP address is actually for the pfSense. So that's the WAN address of my pfSense. So my plan is to use the default port of 3389 to forward that in to my Ubuntu VM. And for my Windows 11 virtual machine, I'll use port 3390 on the WAN interface to forward in to port 3389 on that Windows VM. So let's just go ahead and confirm that this does not work. We can see here it's trying to connect, but it's not going to be able to because the firewall is blocking any requests for port 3389 on the WAN interface. All right, lost connection. So we'll just close that for now. Now let's switch over to VMware Workstation. We can see here that 199.204 matches the IP address that I have in my RDP client. So let's take a look at how we can do this. Now you could go into Firewall rules, create the necessary rules, and then make your adjustments for NATing, or what I prefer to do is just go into NAT. So here we've got our NAT port forward, and I'm going to add a new NAT rule here. So I want the interface to be WAN. So that's my local area network here in my physical world. So that's the 199.204 address. Protocol, I'll just set that as TCP because RDP is a TCP protocol. We'll scroll this down here a little bit. Okay, so destination port. So from port to port, we want this to be the MS RDP. Now for this first one, for Ubuntu, I'm going to go ahead and select this dropdown, the MS RDP, which is port 3389. I could have left it as other and plugged in 3389, but I just want to show that this works. Now the target IP that I want inside of the network is going to be 192.168.110.201. That is the internal IP address of my Ubuntu VM. And the port is just going to still be MSRDP. And we'll call this RDP to Ubuntu. We'll go ahead and save that and apply the changes. Okay, let's go ahead and try that out by using my Ramina client here. So we can see Workstation Ubuntu. I'll double click that. Now this time that bar went away pretty quick because it went ahead and connected RDP into that Ubuntu VM. So now anybody here in my home can RDP to that address. And if they know the credentials to actually log into the VM, they'll be able to log in and use the VM. So I can do this from my Fedora Workstation. I could do it from my MacBook Pro. I could do it from a NUC. I could do it anywhere here in my local area network. Nobody out on the internet can do it because I do not have port forwarding from my public internet into that VM. Okay, so now what happens if we want to have another system that we want to RDP to? Well, we've already used port 3389 on the WAN interface here of pfSense. So we choose another port and we simply map that external port to 3389 on the inside. So let's go see how to do that. Now I'm logged into the Windows 11 VM. That's this one here in the diagram. And we are logged into the pfSense Community Edition version 2.7.2. We'll add a new rule here. We're still going to use WAN. We're still going to use TCP for the protocol. For the destination port range, we'll just put in 3390 for each of these. And then we'll scroll down and we're going to redirect target IP. So this again is going to be the IP address of the system on the inside. So let's confirm what our IP address actually is on this Windows machine. And we can see here that the address is 110.203. So 192.168.110.203. And we'll go ahead and put that in there. And for the port, we're going to redirect 3390 to MSRDP. Now, if we had done some special settings on our target system to have RDP listen on a different port, we can set this to other and specify that other port. But since we're using NATing and we're choosing a different external port to map in, we can go ahead and still use 3389 on the guest system. So this one, we will name it RDP to Win11. Now we'll scroll down and we'll hit save. Apply our changes. Now I'm going to minimize the browser here. Okay. Now this is my Windows 11 VMware Workstation tab that we have loaded. I'm going to switch over to my Ramina remote desktop client. And we can see here that for the target server, I have the same IP address that I put in for Ubuntu, but I have a colon and 3390 because we're telling it to establish an RDP connection, but to use port 3390. So let's go ahead and double click that one. And yes, we'll accept the certificate. And there we go. We are logged in, and if I just click down here on my browser, I can see that it's still sitting right at the same page that I was at before. Now, something to keep in mind when you're dealing with RDP, if your target system is Windows and you're logged into the local system like I was under VMware Workstation, and you go to establish an RDP connection to that target system, then you will take over that console. You see here my Windows 11 VM in VMware Workstation. It is now at the lock screen because I have logged in via remote desktop. Now, this is a bit different than what happens with Linux because XRDP only allows you to connect if nobody is logged in locally. See here, I'm not logged in to the local system, but I was able to log in via RDP. Now, I think the same goes the other way around. If I try to log in here at the local console, I shouldn't be able to because an RDP connection is already established. Let's check that to make sure. See, that's not letting me log in. Okay, so let's go ahead and log out of the RDP session. And we'll say log out. Okay, so now let's go back over to VMware Workstation and we'll try logging back in at the console. And now we're able to log in. So it's either one or the other when it comes to using RDP with Linux. Either your local console or an RDP session. You can't have one established and then use the other one to overtake that particular session. But with Windows 11 or a Windows target system, you could be logged in via RDP or the console, and whichever one you try logging into secondly will take over the existing session. So here I'm going to log in to the console, and in the background here, we should see this Windows 11 RDP session drop because I'm taking over the console session. And there I went, and now I'm logged back in at the console. Okay, so in this video, I have established a connection through my pfSense firewall on port 3389 to my Ubuntu VM. And I've also been able to establish a connection via port 3390 through pfSense to my Windows 11 VM. Okay, and remember, don't do this on a public-facing interface. This is just for lab use. There are other more secure ways to establish remote connections from an outside public internet environment to your network, but I'm not covering that here. That's not the scope of what I'm dealing with here. This is just a home lab environment. Okay, that is going to wrap it up for today. I've covered what I'd like to get across, and I thank you for taking the time to watch the video. Go ahead and hit that like, subscribe button. If you want to get a notification of my next video, go ahead and hit that bell as well. All right, have a great week. Thank you.